Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the virtual breakfast sessions. My name is Larry Sashin. As you see on your computers, we've got a great group of people here today to discuss the choices that we have, the expectations for dining versus reality. Um, you know, do we eat in Manhattan or a big city, or do we go to the other boroughs or the burbs? The choices are real now. At one time, if you wanted to impress and you wanted to have a great meal, you had to travel into the city. But now, with the advent of people like Vong and David Burke coming to Westchester and our celebrity chefs that we have here, you can get great meals locally. So before we go into the discussion, let's go around the room and say hello. Why don't you start, Yvonne? Introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Yvonne Lemois. I'm chef and owner of My Kitchen events and catering in Forest Hills.
Okay, and David.
Hi, my name is David Burke. I'm a chef and restaurateur in New York City, New Jersey, soon to be Westchester, a tri-state area basically, and a couple of other locations. Started in New York in the 80s.
Yes, thank you, David. Peter.
Good morning, everyone. Peter Herrero. I'm going to say president of New York Hospitality Group. We run a 90-year-old bistro, bar, and banquet facility in White Plains, New York, on the other side of David. And over the last 30 years, we are now into organic cafes, barbecue catering, off-premise catering, and we run a 115-year-old mansion in Westchester County.
Thank you, Peter. Fred.
Fred,
Unmute yourself, Fred.
Good morning. I'm Fred Clashman. I'm the editor and publisher of Total Food Service. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning.
All right. And Mike has a special duty for you people who are new in the audience. If you have a question or you want to make a statement, go on the chat with Mike, and Mike will let us know that you want to have something to say. Mike, introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Gansel. I'm a business consultant and coach. The name of my company is Voice of Reason Consulting, and I'm business partners with Larry in our initiative, the Strategic Advisory Board, which is a mastermind group for small business owners and entrepreneurs.
Thank you. So back to the subject. This was all spurred by my wife and I had to entertain a couple from Dallas who wanted to go and have a great New York meal. And we ended up going to a place that was supposed to be great. We were smashed into a little table, spent near $600. And I just said, why? And I looked around to see what we could have done. And well, we're not doing that anymore, Ken. So when it comes to entertaining, I'm a firm believer in eating local, dining local. Peter, you've got an interesting twist. You've been in Westchester for God knows how many years. And instead of doing what everybody else does and they expand into other areas, you've doubled down and upgraded your whole operation. Can you discuss that a little bit?
Sure. We felt after 90 years, I've been there for 36 years now, we felt it really needed a major kind of makeover and relaunch. So we had a couple extra years to think about it. With COVID, we've tried to be an experience because we have a bar, we have a bistro, a nicer, higher end restaurant, a bar, and we're putting in a pizza oven on one of our on our deck to make it a hearth. So we're trying for the 3-generational kind of buy, and also instead of going after just more business, it's more wallet share. We want to be the choice. There's a fireplace in between. It was a little pricey, but what New York has is the neighborhood. So we're trying to build that neighborhood inside our building and around our property. We have 5 different step and repeat locations. So we've tried to go to a timeless look that you can spend a couple hours in the building just meandering around and taking photo shoots, as my younger staff says, boss, it's all about the pictures today. So it's really helped us kind of fight the city. White Plains has turned into a city. It is the capital of Westchester County. It's about 30 minutes north of Manhattan, but it's been we have trails now going through our parking lot. People are looking for more than just dining. Back to, if David mentioned being in business in the 80s, when the 80s really was all about entertainment. I truly believe that's coming back. We're going to be having a speakeasy at night for our generation at 9:30 at night. We'll pull curtains over the windows. You only can go in through the back door. They're looking for that something special, something different look. And between the music, the bar, technology, the banquet hall, everything that we've done, we're hoping to capture them for more than a 45-minute meal, kind of for an hour and a half to 2-hour experience.
Thank you, Peter. David, back in the 90s, I in the early 2000s, I frequented the Townhouse very often. You talk about a show place. It was, the food, the atmosphere, everything was wonderful. What made you decide to leave Manhattan and go to Jersey and now Westchester?
Real estate mainly, and a better lifestyle. I had always, I started my career at the River Cafe and lived there in Brooklyn, in Dumbo, before it was Dumbo. And then I had 2 kids, got divorced. My kids are out in Jersey. So I grew up in Jersey. I bought a restaurant in Jersey in 2007, a restaurant that I had worked at in a very good zip code down by the beach in Rumson. And we had to sell that in 14 or 15 because of a partner dispute. I did buy it back recently. It's called Red Horse. That'll be the restaurant that goes to Westchester. So I had a taste of Jersey in a very upscale zip code. But we had the opportunity to buy a building, and which you cannot do in New York. So as I got older as a chef and realized, the leases come and go in New York City and the competition is intense. And when the lease is up, you're done with nothing, so you're a prisoner to the landlord. So I started setting my sights on Jersey. Luckily I did. And we started to develop a company that can buy our own restaurants, manage others, license deals and things like that. And we hit the ground running about 5 years ago. Also in Long Island at the Garden City Hotel. So we have a variety of options in which we operate, but we own about 4 of the real estate, 4 of the restaurants and the dirt, which for me was really good security, especially during the pandemic when some of our license deals and management contracts were put on hold or canceled. So we wanted to be holding all the cards. And honestly, I got tired of going into New York, and I got tired of the workforce changed a little, the rules changed a little bit, the minimum wage got too high, the rents were crazy, and it's on and on and on. It became more difficult for the small restaurateur to stay competitive, even with a good brand like we have. The bottom line shrunk after the minimum wage increase with de Blasio. Our bottom line and many others shrunk by 40 or 50%. And luckily, we were already out in Bergen County and Monmouth County and into Charlotte, North Carolina, where it's, I don't want to say the word easier, but there's more of an opportunity to bottom line some money and also own the real estate.
Hey, thank you.
Interesting.
Yvonne, now I know you cooked in many places, but you owned 2 restaurants, one in Manhattan and one in Queens. Why are you only in Queens?
Well, it's to to follow Chef David, like everything he's saying, like everything you're saying, it's literally, it's echoing the thoughts that I have. And like you're a legend, you know, like you've been around for such great times, and I have a lot of respect for you. They say we all, you know, we walk on the shoulder of giants that came before us. You are that giant. So like I look to some of these people that are amazing and great chefs, and I feel like they have been suffocated out of Manhattan. Like the spark, the joy, growing up, you went to Manhattan because that's where you made it big. You know, those were the stars, the fine dining, the ambitious chefs, the 3-star Michelin. That's what you wanted. And unfortunately, because of the rents, you know, you are a prisoner to the landlord, regardless of what. Like even all these high-end like restaurants and chefs, at the end of the day, you really have to answer to whoever owns that property. And it's becoming less and less about the food, less and less about the service. You go to a hotel and it's all about how can we get people in there, and the rents are, it's more of like a profit share. So it's not necessarily, it's an amenity to the hotel. They don't necessarily care about anything else. And if you look at anybody that owns property, a real estate owner, they're just looking at their profit margin. It's like they're looking at how much money can we get for this? Like your entertainment, you're a dancing monkey at the end of the day, because they just want to make their money. So when I had the opportunity to open this restaurant in the city, we had a restaurant in Midtown, and then we had a restaurant in Tribeca. And it was great. It's fun, it's entertaining, and you make your mark, and you know, you make a little bit of money, but at the end of the day, you're really just negotiating with, you know, these multi-millionaire building owners that most of the time they don't really care about the food or the service or anything like that. They think they do, and they have suggestions. So when I had the opportunity to get out and kind of go on my own, Forest Hills provided a great environment where there's still competition, but there's not a ton of competition. But it really comes down to population density, for us at least, population density and cost of doing business, right? Like you want enough population density around so people can come in, but you also want the cost of doing business to leave a little bit in your pocket. So here we found a good we didn't know if it was going to be like that or not, but we found that it is. Here, it's a great place. There's enough people, enough cultured people, and we don't have to spend every penny in our bag to do what we want to do. Still make a little bit of money, and it's a better environment for us at the end.
Okay, so now we all know why everybody is here. Why should people stay local to dine? What do you bring in your local spot that they can't? Why shouldn't they still do, you know, like I said, when I was younger, the city was the place to go all the time. I know COVID changed it for a lot of people, you know, COVID and the crime rate and everything else that goes with it. But why should people come to your local place as opposed to bright lights in big city? Peter, why don't you start?
Well, I also think, and we have, as restaurateurs, as hospitality specialists, we have to change the way we do business and give them the experience. As I was saying before, yes, I agree with David and Yvonne. We can buy real estate in the suburbs. We can adapt our buildings. If it's LED, variable speed motors, we can do so many things that can really lower our overhead in the suburbs that landlords don't care about, which is amazing, because I've spoken to landlords. I'm like, I need my rent. I want security, but you can both save a lot of money, which in turn means making money and reducing your risk. But as restaurateurs, we need to also take a note from the hospitals. Westchester is booming with HSS, Montefiore, NYU. There's so many hospitals that are coming in the area, but because they're specializing, they're making it convenient. Because you don't have to drive another, let's just say a little bit of traffic and parking, another hour into the city and home, the special events will still be in the city. But that's the one-offs. We really have the opportunity to make it a home. If it's the wine dinner, if it's a wine tasting, if it's a Scotch club or a whiskey club or tequila clubs, sipping. That's what we're doing. And so far, little by little, you got to watch the price point, because that's what Manhattan is going to really have an issue with in the next 3 or 4 years. It's gotten incredibly expensive to do business in our industry. But in the suburbs, we really have an opportunity to give a little more of an experience, a little more of a value. So far, it's early in the game. We're having some successes with it.
Thank you. Thank you. David, you said that the new restaurant in White Plains is going to be like the one in Red Bank. Is that what you?
Yeah, near Red Bank, Rumson.
Okay, so in Rumson. So what kind of experience are you going to deliver that's not already here?
Let me back up a little bit and add to what Peter just said in regard to why to go to the city. You got to understand that 40 years ago, you didn't have great restaurants in the suburbs, right? Because people weren't trained by the masters. The masters came off the boats, the cruise ships, the World's Fair. The French guys landed in New York City in the 60s or whatever it was, and they created a fine dining dynasty in the cities that could support it. The suburbs couldn't. Jersey in the 80s, you had 5 great restaurants. Maybe wouldn't even be great now. Same as Westchester and Long Island. You go to Long Island now, Westchester, Jersey, you can eat in Michelin restaurants. You can, for probably 30% less, but I can get a check average above $100 in Jersey, which is more than enough to pay the bills and make some money. The internet had a lot to do with it, and the training. If I trained people and many other chefs around the country, we train young sous chefs. They want to be entrepreneurial, and many of the younger people are. They open up in Nashville, or they open in the suburbs, and they get investors, and they have some property. So the quality expanded out to the burbs. The demand expanded out to the burbs. Years ago, you'd go into the city because the food sucked in the suburbs. You didn't have the theaters in the suburbs like you do probably in White Plains, certainly in Red Bank and in South Orange and in Morristown. You can go to a show. You can see George Carlin or any other than George Carlin. So I saw him there years ago. But Jerry Seinfeld is playing in Morristown down the street from our restaurant. I have no idea because chefs are always working. But so you can do a show and have a great New York City experience almost without the headache of the traffic, the parking, the tolls, the time is money, time versus money thing. It takes 2 hours to get to the city for a meal. And if you go on a date, especially if it's the first date, you're really going to invest that much time in trying to impress somebody in New York City, or you're going to do it locally. And most people would rather stay local.
I like the way you think.
So that's one part. But I forgot what you said. The other question was.
It's not important. Not
Okay.
important. Your answer was better.
But also the internet. When I was a young chef at the River Cafe, you had a magazine called Food Arts Magazine, Art Culinaire. You had a couple of trade magazines. You had Gourmet, which was well written, and the Bon Appetit and Food and Wines are more for the home cook. But if you wanted to learn, and this goes back to Jan, when you wanted to learn, you had to work in New York or LA or Chicago, or San Francisco. There was no one to teach you in Miami how to cook. And I opened Smith & Wollensky in the 90s in Miami, and there was slim pickings. That was 96. We couldn't even steal a good chef because you had 2 or 3 good restaurants down there. So it's come along. Listen, let's not forget being a chef became a profession in 1977. So there was no pride and hipness in being a chef until the late 80s. And then, I get two parents working, people traveling, and the generation that the 40, 50-year-olds now in the suburbs, they want to have some fun. They want to go out and eat, and they want New York City food. A lot of them have worked in the city in their young careers and moved out, at least in the suburbs that are commuter distance to the bigger cities. We're finding good success.
Thank you. Thank you. Yvonne, you're a product of that you started in the classroom. Can you give the people the idea of the progression of where you started your cooking career? You weren't one of those people that mom and dad gave a pile of money to and opened up a restaurant, or you're not a financier who thought opening a restaurant would be cool. You started as the wizard's apprentice, basically. Give us a little bit of that progression that brought you where you are today.
Sure. I mean, I grew up always loving restaurants, right? And my first restaurant I got through a program called CCAP. I landed at a restaurant called La Caravelle. La Caravelle is one of these like old school French restaurants where, I mean, there was a couple. It was like Dobbs, La Caravelle.
They were magic. They were magic.
This was romance. I fell in love with that. When I was 15 years old when I first got into it. You see all these chefs, and you start getting these books from France, Italy, and mostly that's where everybody was. All the big chefs were coming from, and I fell in love. And I had the opportunity to work at La Caravelle. I went on to work at Le Cirque when Le Cirque was like Le Cirque with Sotacon and Ciro Maccioni and Jacques Torres was there. I mean, this was like amazing. This was what I kind of grew up with. And that's how I fell in love with it. And I continued to work for different chefs, different restaurants where this was really like, it was a romantic profession. Obviously it's hard work and you're sweating every day. And it's like, you don't see the inner workings of what's going on, but it was beautiful. Now it's become such a transactional exchange. It's not, and that's what we got into events in our space. About 2 years ago, like middle of the pandemic, we had the opportunity to come in here. We always did events, but now we mostly do events, and we're able to recreate some of that romance, some of that fantasy. And I think it's kind of reminding us, at least, why people really go out or what we like about going out for dining. And it's that experience, it's that immersion, it's that getaway of like you're going somewhere else, doing something, and that's what we've been able to recreate now. So that's where I also forgot the question.
No, but you've drawn a picture. What you're talking about is the experience. And Peter, you deliver it also. You're talking about the experience of dining. Dining local used to be going to the diner with your parents.
Yeah.
All right. In, you're out, they throw the food down on the table. If you're good, you got some ice cream, and there was your dining experience. You got to order something weird that mom didn't make, and that was it. And you started in Yvonne where dining and I don't know if anybody's been to the River Cafe, but I ate your food in the River Cafe, and the River Cafe is like a theater. And what's the stage? The stage is New York City. And it is one of the most beautiful spots in the world. And to have the food that matches it and to have everything orchestrated is what makes eating a dining experience. And to have that delivered by people like David and Yvonne and Peter right around the corner is why you don't have to get in your car and drive to the city.
Larry, I have a quick question for
Sure.
For Chef Dave, Yvonne, and for Peter. Wasn't there something romantic in the old days about going to the fish market, going to the produce market in order to be able to produce menus at a very high level? So did we need the Baldors and the Chef's Warehouses of the world to come along in order to be able to do this in the suburbs?
I think they help. I mean, I think they help. The Baldors and the Chef's Warehouses are very convenient and they're very good. The problem with the Baldors and the Chef's Warehouses is the young chefs buy everything from them without going to the market, without sourcing product, and they use it as a one-stop shop. And we try to, we don't encourage that. We have a buyer for everything now, but in general, they don't think outside the box. They go down the line, they look at the price list and they order.
Yeah.
They're not forced to think or look for a bargain or seasonality as much as, and the Baldors and they don't send the salespeople like D'Artagnan used to. And some of the old, when D'Artagnan started as a mom and pop, you know, you saw George Faison and Ariane would show up once a month with a goodie bag, and you'd start eating stuff and discussing things, and they would always name drop of who was buying this. John Louis Paladin's using this, and this guy's buying this, and that's how you learned. Now there's a difference. There's a different approach, and I can tell you that the River Cafe and going to is one of the ones that can't be included. That's worth the detour. Let's call it, right? Because it's so unique. The view, the piano, it's even though I worked there, it's still my favorite restaurant. But let's look at Per Se versus French Laundry. Per Se, same chef, same ambition, right? Per Se is up in the high rise there in the AOL and Time Warner building, right? And French Laundry is in Napa Valley. Before you walk through the door of both of those, I'm in a better mood in Napa Valley, ain't I? I'm on vacation. I went to the spa, probably did a wine tasting. I'm not in traffic. I didn't have a tough meeting. I'm going to be on time, if not early. I have parking, right? So you walk in there with a 5-star review before you even put your butt in the seat. You get to New York with an attitude, right? Because you're 15 minutes late. You're nervous about this. You're going up an escalator. So the ambiance and the geography of certain restaurants is certainly helpful. Now, you wouldn't have had the French Laundry in Napa. You didn't have Michelin-starred restaurants in the 80s in Napa Valley, right? So this whole boom of great food in America started 35, 40 years ago, but matured in the 90s, I'd imagine. Food Network had something to do with the interest in food. Now, everything that's helped to grow the industry has a backside to it too. And the chefs on the panel would agree that there are lots of people in this business because they think it's sexy and cool that don't belong in it. Yeah. Whereas the old school, if you worked at Le Circle La Caravelle, and I love La Caravelle, by the way, because I worked at La Crémaillère, which is my first Westchester experience. That was owned by Robert Maison, who was the original owner of La Caravelle. And so I worked with Wally Maloof at La Crémaillère in 1982. And it was the same type of, I think you worked for Rita Jamais, probably, not maybe, but he was the former owner. But those types of restaurants were dining experience and theater and professional. And you still can't get that service in the suburbs, but it's not necessary anymore because people that are eating don't necessarily always want that service. Danny Meyer proved that.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, let's back up a little bit. Joyce, you unmute Joyce, please. Unmute yourself, Joyce.
Morning, everyone.
You had a question before I saw it come through.
Well, you know, as even Yvonne and I have had this conversation, are we headed back to the pub-like experience, the community gathering? We've come out of the pandemic, and people are looking for community to gather. Do you think that's going to make a difference in what you will be doing in your restaurants? Like Peter, you said the wine clubs, the, you know, other things you're trying to do to bring your, you know, to be a neighborhood, a place for the community. We know what the old way of doing things was. What's the new way that you think will be effective? And the other thing I've heard and have noticed, there's more of a nightlife still in the city. I live out here on Long Island. By 11 o'clock, everything's dead. So you do have the people who have moved out here from the city who still want some kind of nightlife. Is that going to come back?
Okay. Who wants to tackle that one? Peter.
If I may, I think our industry is maturing. So yes, the Baldors and the chefs warehouses there, but you still have the smaller companies that are coming in and talking to the chef once a month. They're actually having classes now. The bigger organizations to get us, same thing with wine and beer and ciders. I think our industry is matured to the point that I ever think we'd have semi-organic cafes. You were either organic or you weren't. But now hospitals want it. So do I think price point is going to affect all of us? Inflation is going to really hurt us. And people are going to think twice about dining out. But to your point, Joyce, the pub will always be there, or the bar and grill will always be there. But I do like that, and we've seen it in many different locations where they have a bar and grill and they have a bistro or a high-end restaurant next to each other. Depending on your mood, depending on who you're dining with, if it's just us, we're good with a bar and grill. We order anything, we all eat, and it's good. If it's family, you sit down. I think everything in our industry has been shaken up and everything is available, and it can change on the drop of a dime. We decided because of COVID not to do white tablecloths, but for parties, we do white tablecloth now. And it does look strange, but it's funny. It adds a little theater to a party of 12 to 30 because it has white tablecloth, votive candles in the same restaurant. I think we have opportunities to kind of pick and choose what we want. The hard part's going to be, is it a symphony? Does it get along with each other? Does it sound and look and feel right? That's my 2 cents.
Okay. You know, we've left out something. You know, Manhattan was I remember when I worked in Manhattan, my wife would take the train in and meet me in the city, or take a cab and meet me in the city, and we'd go out to dinner. Everybody's working from home. And if you don't live in Manhattan, the idea of a Thursday night driving into the city to go out to dinner, or a Wednesday night, doesn't happen. So I think there's a great advantage to what the outer boroughs, the local places have over Manhattan, in the fact that everybody is local during the day now. What are you seeing with that? You see, well, you have events. David, what's going, your Jersey places? Do you see more of a weekday dining because people are home?
Yeah, and that's a good point. Years ago, we had restaurants in Jersey in 07. We created burger night on a Tuesday. We were closed Mondays because Tuesdays was dead. And it was Wednesdays. That was only 15, 16 years ago. Now we have restaurants that are fairly busy on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Of course, Friday and Saturday is busier. But people are eating out during the week. It's not the weekend warrior anymore in the suburbs. It used to be everybody wanted to eat at 7 o'clock on Friday, Saturday night. So we've been able to spread it out. With sometimes we do a promotion on a Tuesday or something else. But yes, lunch still doesn't exist for us in the suburbs. Now we're not in Morristown. We have a very large restaurant that does about, and it's in a city. It's a little smaller than White Plains, or probably half the size, maybe even less. But we do about 80 lunches at this point. But lunch develops in more of the fourth quarter now. People start getting, and again, if they're not back at the office, you're not going to do lunch. And the whole takeout game doesn't really work for us that well. It adds, the problem with takeout is it takes away from the dining experience when the kitchen gets jammed, putting things in boxes, and the people in the dining room are waiting. So, we try to juggle that as well. And back to the Joyce's thing about the pubs, we learned a lesson during 9/11. When 9/11 hit, the neighborhood places were packed. People went there for information. They went there to talk and gossip and feel secure and find out what was what. And when the pandemic hit, now it's similar. But people are going back. But the sense of neighborhoods in New York are much different than neighborhoods in the suburbs. Obviously, the neighborhoods in New York, you can live across the street from someone and never even see them. So you can meet people, and a lot of the pub stuff and the local comfort zone places have a lot to do with the operator, the old Irish guys behind the bar, and the owner being there all the time, and not handing your business off to an 18-year-old hostess at the door who could give a crap about whether someone comes back or not. So the hospitality is something that's super important. Right now, especially with the economy the way it is, people cannot leave without feeling that you tried your best and want them back. And that doesn't happen with a part-time $16 an hour person at the door. You need management and you need buy-in, and it's hard to find. You got to put a lot more work into training, a lot more work into getting the pros. The good news about suburban restaurants versus New York now is there are many people, mature restaurant people that have spent 20 years working in New York that are ready to take a pay cut or not and go out to the suburbs and say, to hell with the commute, lifestyle is more important, and I can grow with this young company, and I have pride in working there. And that has a lot to do with the ego and the restaurant mentality. If you're working at Le Cirque in New York or some really good place, you don't want to be managing Applebee's in the burbs, right? Even though there's a compensation, you want to at least say, I'm I'm working for XYZ in a place that you can be proud of. And that's what we've been able to deliver to some of our people. And as the restaurants get big, we've trained a lot of sous chefs and managers that would have gone on and opened their own restaurants. And now they're training people. So the pool in the suburbs is better.
And there's a lot of exciting things going on in the suburbs. The smaller restaurant, the people who, the chef who has broken away from working with somebody and has an idea and he's chasing that idea. The reason you're in business, Yvonne, you worked all these great places, and what you do comes from these restaurants, but what you do is different. It's different. It is your twist. If you look at the New York Times every Sunday, the new restaurants, they're all in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
They're all in, it used to be everything was in Midtown Manhattan.
Yeah.
And it was downtown Manhattan. And now it's jumped across the river to Brooklyn. In the Bronx here, there's openings of Latino restaurants that are incredible. Latino restaurants all over. Why is this that all this is happening in outer boroughs and or the burbs and not in Manhattan? Why do you think, Yvonne?
I think it just comes down to the real estate, honestly. The cost of doing business in Manhattan has gone so difficult. It really strangles, it just strangles creativity. It strangles you only have so much time in the day. So you spend it either training people for good service, you spend it, perfecting the food, building customer relations. But when you're literally just working every single day and you're trying to maximize as much as you can, can we open for breakfast? Would that make us money? But we're already overstretched opening for lunch and dinner, just because you have to make a little bit more money and you have to try to maximize the business. I think it takes away from focusing on that great experience. And if I could say, I think one of the reasons so many great restaurants are opening in Brooklyn is the same thing. A lot of these young kids that are just sick and tired of being in the city, and they don't see the opportunity because the buy-in is so much higher in Manhattan. The buy-in for a space is very, very expensive. You have a better opportunity to go to a little place in Brooklyn where the landlord is not going to be as demanding, where you're not going to have to sign your life away, or you're not going to have to get 15 different partners, where you're going to have a very small percentage of what you get to keep. This is great to have investors if you need the money, but at the end of the day, if you're not making any money, what's the point, right? What's the point of the business if you're not going to get to keep anything? A lot of these young people are going to go and they're going to work their asses off because of that dream. They're chasing a dream, and they don't think of the financial, the financial responsibility of what it takes to really operate, because it is a business. We're in that same position right now. We're in Queens, where the buy-in was much cheaper. Our landlords are amenable to change things and do things. My landlord, at least, is not so much of a ball buster, and she's open to doing things, and they want that notoriety of having a great restaurant of where they are, but they also just kind of they are in the burbs for a reason. You know, they don't want the cutthroat kind of business that is Manhattan at the end of the day. That makes sense?
Yep, Peter, you know, it's your restaurant in the last 2 years has done a complete changeover. From look to the chef. The food is different. The food is improved. Give me the thoughts into, you know, you don't do anything on the spur of the moment. I've known you for years. You are a planner. Talk about the plans.
It's funny, David, you're in the back of my ear. We picked up a chef from the city, but who lived in White Plains. He used to commute an hour to an hour and a half to the city and never see his kids. And we've made him, he's now a managing partner. And the nice thing is he's in his late 40s. The talent that's coming up here, but we have to put the right package together. He has freedom to, and it was just one of those things. I've been in business 36 years, and he was funny. So how many chefs have you gone through? I said, gone through? If you come aboard, you'll be our fourth one. The average chef with us, executive chef, is 10 to 15 years. But we changed the entire kitchen to be able to do the catering work and the restaurant work. To David's point, though, he did take a pay cut, but his kid was right down the street, his son at Stepanak High School. His son stopped in for lunch and his father could have lunch with him. He's worked for, doesn't matter what, Danny Myers, great performances. But the difference is when you have that partnership, I'm gonna say, with the landlord, I'd like to talk to Con Ed about variable speed motors. I'd like to talk to Con Ed about lighting. I'd like to talk to Con Ed about programming our HVAC. There's so many things that we can do, but to your point, Larry, it takes years to research, develop, and implement. But we are artists to a degree. I am not. I tried to be. I failed miserably. So I ended up to be the director. I bring in great salespeople, a great environment, great chefs, and we put them all together. We have an opportunity in our industry right now to talk to landlords, to get them to invest in their property, where I've challenged my taxes twice in the last 36 years. And we are paying we have a bigger building that we had a decade ago, because we've added 2 buildings to our building. We're at 15,000 square feet and 4 stories, the same amount as we did 18 years ago. But landlords don't care because you're paying it. So why do they have to contest their taxes? But how about we split the difference? You save a couple $1,000s a month and I'll save a couple $1,000s a month. You're finding that the landlords, the smart landlords, are working out deals with restaurateurs, one, because they have to, and hopefully they're buying in to our holistic, healthy way of being part of the community. So for us, I'm not a spur of the moment guy. I'd love to say I am. I'm sorry, that's my dog, Grace. She's watching the gardener, the landscaper go through, and so excited to go play with somebody. But it's those long-term investments. And I will tell you, I never thought I'd be with a large company, Cisco. We do a lot of our work with Cisco. We had a client last week. It was a barbecue for $3,600. Because of pricing, because of consistency and quality, we had to source most of our product through one of the large wholesalers out there. But there's a balance in our industry that if we integrate what we do, if it's food, if it's service, and you're all right when it comes to service. Right now, service is incredibly difficult. I sometimes feel my wife, who's my partner, and she's in charge of the restaurant manager, and the chef are all on the floor for a 140-seat restaurant. It's ridiculous. But the staff that we have to keep training, we give them checklists. I know it sounds ridiculous. We have a picture in the kitchen what you're supposed to look like, because that just don't show up looking that way anymore. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yes. Okay. All right. So guys, we've just got 12 minutes left to go here. Joyce, do you have another question?
Does transportation take a part in where your employees come from? Because, for example, in Manhattan, they can take a subway. You know, in White Plains, you know, is your pool from the local neighborhood? How are they getting to work? Is that affecting you? And, you know, like you said, Peter, you know, your manager's son is in the high school down the street. You know, are you offering those kids internships and opportunities and building them into your labor pool?
It's funny, they are more willing to work than the old waiters and bartenders that have become prima donnas or found other jobs or whatever it is. David's a little more lucky because he's in downtown White Plains, but we get our staff after you've been with us 6 months to a year, you're really good. I get them. We have a local bike shop that used to have used bikes. For $100 or $200, we get them bicycles. We have a bicycle rack in the building. We have a local landlord that has multifamily homes in the area. And right now we only have 2 homes. And I help them with the deposit. It's one of our supervisors runs the house with his family. There's a lot of things that you have to do in the suburbs that you can't do in the city, but transportation is one. So some of it's bicycling, some of it's just educating everybody where buses are. Some of it's getting to know the local landlords, because local landlords to a degree love us. I'll put the deposit down. If somebody doesn't pay, you let me know and I'll take care of it. And the staff knows if you work with us, you will get your housing, but you have to behave. And so the nice thing is there's always a conversation if somebody doesn't pay the rent. I will tell you, haven't had that conversation in 25 years. The first 4 or 5 years was a little challenging, but we have 2 bus routes near us, a couple blocks from us. And don't laugh, we pay overtime on purpose so that they get to a living wage. Even at $16 or $18 an hour, once you do 5 or 10 hours overtime, it really helps. We also have 3 neighbors, a market, another restaurant, a liquor store, and a bodega. We all know each other and we share staff. So there's a lot of creative things that you have to do in the suburbs that the city doesn't have to.
All right. Thank you, Peter. Thank you. All right. So in the last few minutes, what I want to do is want each one of you, and we're going to start with Yvonne, why people should come and to you as opposed to taking the trek into the city. What is the advantage of dining local, and what is the advantage of holding events local?
I'll start with, have you taken the subway recently? It's a disaster and it's horrible. And I think we haven't really mentioned this too much, but I think the pandemic really changed the landscape when it comes to people wanting.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. Please, if you're going to talk, mute. All right, start again, please.
I was saying, I think the pandemic has really changed the landscape of a lot of things, but obviously we're in the restaurant business. And I think people wanting a better quality of life, realizing that it was a very toxic environment of working, 60+ hours in the restaurant and constantly being stressed out, not eating right, everybody over drinking, doing drugs. And it's not a very healthy lifestyle for the people that are working in restaurants. So, and like I mentioned before, if you've taken a trip into the city recently, to most parts of Manhattan, it's not the same. And we were recently there for Fashion Week, and it was awesome. It was awesome because we were in Soho and all the cool people were out and it was fantastic. But once you get out of these little microcosms of coolness, the city's still very dangerous. It's still very dirty. It's not fun as it used to be. And I think as everybody's getting older and kind of realizing that they want better things, cleaner, safer environments. I think that the moves of a lot of these people, the mass exodus of people that left the city and went out into the other boroughs, as you like to call them, really gives us a great opportunity, because all these people have traveled, have tasted, have higher expectations, they've been exposed to more things, and now they have this place where you can have a better life. But you could also use all those experiences to create something amazing that haven't been done in those spaces before. So that's, I think, that the great opportunity that we have right now. We've been exposed to so much all over the world, trained with some fine dining people, and now you can recreate this in smaller places where people have the money to spend and they want that entertainment. They want
Thank
that
you.
high quality stuff.
Thank you. David, what are you bringing to White Plains that's not there already? And, why should people come see you?
Well, I think that I don't know the White Plains footprint. I know some of the restaurants. I'm happy to meet Peter, and I'll probably follow up with Peter and try to have a coffee next week. Well, we have a brand. We have a brand. We cook exciting food. We cook high quality food at a fair price. We also have a beautiful space right downtown that we can create a social restaurant, where you can, Peter mentioned earlier, the step and repeat. Where's the vibe? Here's the Instagram shot. Our food has always been Instagrammable, because at the River Cafe, in order to get some, not to look at the window, we had to create beautiful food. So we want an experience where the food is talked about, conversational, Instagrammable, shareable, marketable, and delicious, right? We have a big bar there. We're going to do a happy hour, and we're going to open for lunch, which BLT did not, and keep the vibe going. I don't think it's going to, maybe there's a bit of a nightlife on certain nights with some music. Don't know yet, but I've gotten some, I'll be back up there this Friday to work with some designers on what we're going to do. And we're going to help build the fabric of that community and get it recognized for having great food outside of New York City. That's what we've done in Morristown. That's what we do in when we go to certain where we're certainly competitive. We're all competing with each other for a certain clientele, but competition breeds excellence, and it also gets more people to say, let's just go into White Plains and bounce around. Or let's get the White Plains gets more eyeballs on it as to it's a good place to eat. And not only that, in the longer term, when you say, why eat local? You eat local. I live down on the Jersey Shore. You eat local to support your local restaurant, because when you have a town with 3 restaurants or any retail business that's out of business, your real estate value in your home is not as good. Everybody wants a town that's full. You go to Montclair, Morristown, or Red Bank, all the shops are full. Now, Asbury, they have a clever idea, and they built that back from scratch, because the 3 or 4 big developers keep those shops open, right? They make deals. They're part of the partnership. And you have to have you don't want to drive down a town where 3 or 4 buildings are for sale or the retail's there. So you support the local, and it supports your investment in your home.
Okay, and I know this is just an estimate now because of White Plains and the way they do things. When do you plan on opening?
We'll be open in January. I don't think, even if I wanted to open in December, it's just too chaotic. So we think by mid-January we should be open. I've just started hiring a couple people. I'm starting to do some stuff now with design. It doesn't need a lot of work. It's a beautiful space. It needs cosmetic stuff, and we're not going to be demoing. And again, we don't think that we need to build a Tao or a Avra in order to be successful. We need the Rolls Royce is on the plate, not in the decor. You know what I mean? So the decor, I can get away with a Cadillac decor and put the Rolls Royce on the plate. So now if I had a 20-year lease, which I don't, I have less, I'd invest more. So everything it's a math equation. How much are we going to invest with a 12-year lease versus a 25? Let's see how it goes. And again, we want to get in there, and we don't want that heavyweight debt on our shoulders. So we get clever. We with how we cook and how we buy things and how we invest. Now, one of the other things that came up earlier about being in the suburbs, it's a lot easier to get investors to invest in a restaurant or a chef if the real estate's part of it. Because most investors, so they got something to hang on to. Even if the restaurant goes out of business, they got the nugget. And you can't afford to buy a building in New York. I can't buy a $12 million building in New York. And the investors, and just to be a slave, and I agree with the toxic work environment, which I'm certainly been a part of. It's kind of built in with me. I mean, I don't know any other way. And we deal with stress very well because that's all we know. And the problem is with restaurateurs is when everything is calm at home, you're worried. Like, something's go wrong. So I think that investing in the community is an investment in protecting the real estate of that community and building it up. We do a lot of work with the communities for donations. I bought a bakery recently, and we send things to schools and stuff. And it comes back to you. You don't really see it. You can't count it, but the goodwill comes back when you serve communities if you're doing the right hospitality thing.
Thank you. Peter, you're up.
Unmute.
You have to unmute. You're doing a Marcel Marceau, Peter. You're unmute.
Unmute.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
I've been listening to the answers, but I forgot the question. I apologize.
Why should people come local? Why are they coming to you?
The great thing is, and David, you'll see it in White Plains. They're seeing it in Terrytown. It's a lot, Portchester, a lot of towns are, there's a great book out. It's called The Joy Experience or Experiment. And it is how walking through neighborhoods and through towns is becoming so much more interesting. David, right across from you, you have a beautiful light, water, and sound show in a plaza. There's a lot going on in Westchester. I can only speak for Westchester because that's one. We're giving a quality product, an experience, and value and including parking, and we're trying to do the entire package where New York City really has to focus on to be the best and get that pricing because of the cost, the best in that one market. I will tell you, we've spent a lot of time in the last year planning and putting our parking lot together and flow. We're being the total package because we have control of our real estate and the partners in the area. I do think we'll always be challenged when people want to have a whole evening. So, because you can walk through the city and I don't know, we're all people watchers to a degree. It's exciting. People are nuts. I just like watching people at times. And if I have a little, I hate to admit it, I love my walking with my coffee, but I love turning my coffees at night into an Irish coffee. No one bothers you. I think the suburbs really have an opportunity to grab a larger portion of people's wallet share. We will still lose those special events. When people come out of town, you go to Manhattan because just walking through it is crazy. I do think we have an opportunity to be different, and we're getting the talent, the different cuisines. One of my favorite, you used to walk through Manhattan and get all these different restaurants. You're getting them in Westchester. You're just having one every 3 or 4 towns. But you find the Vietnamese restaurant, you find the Argentinian restaurant. We're getting them now.
Thank you. Fred, what do you got to say for yourself?
Well, I think this was an amazing panel. I can't thank everybody enough. Chef Burke, thanks so much. And you made a point about giving back to the community. Last Wednesday night, I go to the back of the kitchen for Table to Table in New Jersey, and there he is doing his thing. So, I mean, clearly when you invest back in these communities, as you guys have all done, it always comes back. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Let me thank you. Let me add one more thing about to give credit to the suburbs of the outer boroughs, because I've been in the city most of my life. As a suburban restaurant owner, you have to work harder to make your guests happy because they're repeat business you must depend on. In New York City, you got conventioneers and tourists and people on business, and theater goers and all this other stuff. Even in Vegas and stuff like that, even worse. They don't even care if you got a repeat business. But if you're in a small town or you're in Queens, you're drawing from the local people. They need to meet. They get menu fatigue. You got to change your menu more often because they're coming once or twice a week. And you also got to keep them happy because they have choices. So running a suburban restaurant, don't think there's not competition or it's easier than New York because you don't have the same amount of bodies. So you got to keep those bodies happy.
Thank you. Thank you. Mike, anything to say? Unmute.
So actually, let me summarize for a second all of the things that I've heard in this conversation, which by the way has been fascinating. And by the way, I live in Manhattan. I think I'm the only one here who lives in Manhattan. So, but I have had the experience of going out to the Burbs with Larry and having dinner, and I've had some great dinners. But here's some of the things that I've heard as to why people would basically be more prone to eat in the suburbs. There's a lot of parity. You guys have talked about parity. You've talked about the economy. You've talked about COVID. You've talked about the internet. You've talked about the talent pool. You've talked about space and landlords. And also the concept of buy local, eat local. I mean, all of that has contributed to basically a much better experience in the burbs. And I think you've covered every one of those and probably more. And then lastly, I think that you all understand that you need to create a dining experience and theater together for your patrons. So I congratulate you on a terrific session. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And, you know, I'll come out to your restaurants, even though I live in Manhattan, because I do have a
Where in Manhattan are you,
We
Mike?
still have one in New York.
I live on the
Mike, where
Upper
are
West.
you?
I live on the Upper West Side. I was born on the Lower East Side. I moved to the Bronx when I was 7. I moved back to Manhattan since I'm 22. I've been in Manhattan for the last 50 plus years. So
We're letting everybody know your age, Mike.
Yes.
All right. Hey, everybody, thanks for coming out today and spending time with us. I really appreciate what you've done. If anybody in the audience has any questions that you haven't had a chance to ask, drop me a little line and I'll make sure your questions get answered. And in parting, I only have 2 things to say. Everybody, oh, by the way, we won't have another VBS in 2 weeks. It'll be, I believe, the 18th or 19th. Check out Eventbrite for the title and what we're going to be doing. But all I'd like is just 2 things for everybody here. Please, everybody, stay positive, test negative. See you
Amen.
next time.
See
Bye
ya.
now.
Thank
Good day,
you.
yo.
Yeah.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye now.